And away we go. It's just me, guys. I'm not sure where the lads are. I might be doing something. As of this recording, daylight saving time in the UK has now been executed. So now, 1 hour has been shaved off for the sake of being in the sun much longer. Although sounds good, it does come at the cost of our body cycles kind of being screwed up for a couple of weeks, and then have to readjust again until we go back to normal time around the autumn. So, Yahoo! Messed up body clocks. Let's go. Anyway, but jokes aside, let's just get right into the news, shall we? Scientists hope weevils from Louisiana can tackle invasive water plants called Salvinia minima that are threatening South African aquatic ecosystems. Oh, okay. The tiny weevils brought over 8,700 miles, lay eggs and feed exclusively on the Salvinia plant, causing it to die. Another classic case of species being invasive to foreign environments they not belong in. We all know what happened when Europeans brought over rabbits to Australia, and then over the years, rabbits bred like crazy, and now Australia has quite the rabbit problem to tackle because there's so many rabbits reproducing themselves, which outnumbers the native wildlife in Australia. It's not good. Invasive species, they've got to go. Go back to where they came from. Now, if I was talking about immigration, that'd be a different story, and that would not be popular with a lot of people. I understand that, but in terms of wildlife, of course, we've got to preserve the environment that we live in. I've been talking about the environment recently. Yeah, that wouldn't fly well with Risk, or Eric. Well, mostly Risk. Yeah. He doesn't care about the environment. He's a capitalist, because of course he is. He's in the game for making a lot of moolah, bring in the big cheese. That's his game. And so what? Immigration officials look to collect social media handles from those seeking benefits. Is this new? I don't know. Is it new? On March 5th, US immigration officials issued a notice asking for public comment on a proposal to collect social media handles from individuals applying for immigration benefits, including green cards and citizenship. The proposal aims to comply with an executive order titled Protecting the United States from Foreign Terrorists and Other National Security and Public Safety Threats, issued by President Donald Trump with a public feedback deadline of May 5th. The policy seeks to require people to share their social media handles when applying for US citizenship, asylum, and other immigration benefits, affecting an estimated 3.6 million people, according to USY. Wow. I mean, on one hand, I understand that there has to be some way to tackle with immigration flow, like, can't have too many immigrants coming into a country that outnumbers the number of homes that are being built for them, and whatever opportunities are available to them once they get in the country. But on the other hand, what are social media handles going to do in terms of tackling immigration? Other than the fact they have a social media presence. So if they do something that's illegal, just look at their social media handles, maybe ask Meta or whoever social media platform it is, ask for their location, track them down, and deport them back to where they were coming from. I mean, other than that, out of all the measures for immigration regulation, or regulations of immigration, using social media handles might be one of the stupidest ideas I might have heard in my life. I mean, I'm not against like having social media handles as a way of tracking immigration, but there are other ways to track immigration. How is using social media handles going to be any help? And what if platforms like Meta or TikTok they say, nope, we're not sharing any information with you. What are the US government going to do now? Or what is any other government going to do if they ask for information and they said no? Desperate times call for desperate measures. Not everything is going to go their way. Never has, never will. Computer attack affects Journal de Noticias and TSF websites. According to a note issued by TSF and Journal de Noticias, the attack on computer and radio broadcasting systems is affecting several services, including news sites and e-paper editions. See what else it says. On its website, Journal de Noticias states that, quote, the computer systems of Noticias Limitadas and global media suffered an attack that affected several services, including newspaper websites and e-paper editions of newspapers, as well as TSF broadcasting systems. End quote. Despite the constraints, it is still possible to access the online news from JN, or Jogo, or TSF, but the websites of the magazines Eversource, Noticias Magazine, and Volta ao Mundo, as well as the titles Delas and NTV, are unavailable, the Lucid news agency found. Wow, that's quite the attack. And for some reason, I sound a lot whinier than I do right now. I don't like that. But back to the cyber attack. It's never good to be attacked, digitally at least. Now, there are many reasons for this, but whatever happens, well, you know, as the years go by, cyber attacks will become more common. So, for those news outlets affected, if they just dust it off and don't think it's going to happen again, well, they should think again, because it might happen again. And if it does happen again, and they didn't do anything about it, that's on them. I know there's always limitations, and there's not much that people can do, but you can never be too safe online. You always got to be 2 steps ahead, whether it be digitally, in the physical world, or whatever world we live in. There's so much that you could do to protect yourself from whatever attacks that come our way. 22-year-old Palestinian tortured, killed by Hamas after joining Gaza protests against terror group. Okay, now this is very, very, how do I put it? Perplexing and confusing. And I'm glad something like this has come up. Because whenever I talk about whatever's going on between Gaza and Israel, just remember, a nation's government is different to a nation's people. They are nothing alike. Like, even Risk has spoken out against the UK government many times. Even a couple of times during the 14-year reign of the Tories. He has still spoken out, Risk 11. They're not the same. A nation's people and a nation's state, they are not the same. They think differently, they've lived different lives, etc., etc. Mostly different everything. So let's see what this says, the headline. Hamas loyalists claim that his alleged participation in anti-Hamas protests meant he was a quote-unquote traitor. Makes sense. If you go against a militant organization, of course they're going to call you a traitor. And of course they're going to go after you, because If people see you as a threat to the way of operation, well, yeah, of course they'll stop at nothing to stop you if you do speak out against them. Not surprised, but quite unfortunate that this has to come down to this. The family of murdered O'Day Nasser al-Rabi, 22, said he was found dumped in front of his family home over the weekend in the Gaza Strip after he participated in demonstrations against Hamas. According to his relatives, he was kidnapped, tortured, and then executed by members of the Islamist movement. During his funeral on Saturday, scores of people marched, echoing the protest with chants of quote-unquote Hamas out. Since the demonstrations erupted last week, held in several locations in Gaza, this is the first murder in retaliation. A Gazan exiled to Turkey who relayed footage of these gatherings on social media said he has received threats from senior Hamas officials. Well, they're very mad. It just comes to show. It does not matter how you put it, how you say it. You can put it as lightly as you can. There's always going to be people that they're going to call you names, and they're going to call you out for saying what you just said. And it's going to happen. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, and I've said this many times, and I will say it again. This conflict, it has to end, and certainly Eric would certainly say the same thing. It's quite unfortunate. The circumstances that has happened, there's still people being held hostage, at least some people, even though there's been reports that a few people that were held hostage now being freed. Not everyone has been freed yet. And of course, there are still a handful of people who are being unalived weekly. Even though there may not be as much news reports about people being unalived in such conflicts for the past few months, that doesn't mean people aren't being unalived in some way. I just had enough of that. Hopefully, a solution comes about. It may not be soon. It may not be this week. It may not be this month. It may not even be this year, sadly. But a solution will come eventually. And hopefully, we'll be there when it happens. Medical supplies in great need as international assistance flows into Myanmar after earthquake. Wow, I've heard a lot about this. Emergency aid has streamed into Southeast Asia in the 2 days since a massive earthquake struck Myanmar and Thailand. Relief efforts are focused on Myanmar, where the estimated death toll rose to 1,644 people by Sunday afternoon. The number of dead from Friday's 7.7 magnitude quake is expected to increase, while the number of injured was 3,408 and 139 people were missing as of Sunday. The earthquake's epicenter was near Mandalay, Myanmar's second largest city, with 1.5 million people. In neighboring Thailand, the death toll rose to 17. So many people have been talking about that. And it's so sad that so many people have lost their lives because of earthquakes. Well, that's part of nature. There's not much we can do. We can find ways to reduce the risk of it happening, but we can't stop these incidences in general altogether. They're still going to happen. It's how nature flows. That's how the climate flows. No matter how much the climate changes, it's still going to happen. However, rest in peace to those who have lost their lives. So, new 3D technology could soon bring surgeons closer to patients in Africa's most remote regions. In late February, 46-year-old Charles Owusu Eseku, I think I said it right, who has been seeking care for a keloid on his neck since 2002, and 68-year-old George Opoku seeking care for sarcoma, the first trial of 3D telemedicine technology in Ghana at the Koforidua Regional Hospital. This initiative developed by Microsoft in partnership with local doctors and researchers, and building on earlier trials in Scotland, aims to address the shortage of specialist doctors for Africa's 1.4 billion people by providing remote consultations. Nice. Nice to see that the healthcare world is making progress. Well, it's unfortunate we have to hear about Microsoft, despite their influence and, well, other controversies that mostly speak for themselves. However, it's something. It's better than nothing. I don't want circumstances that, like, big corporations getting involved. However, if there's good coming out of it, might as well. It's better than nothing. I'll give it that. Thousands in Serbia protest outside pro-government television station. Thousands rallied outside Informer TV in Serbia, protesting against its propaganda campaign against student demonstrators, as reported by its attendees. The student protest, sparked by a tragedy in November, demand accountability for government corruption and have garnered significant public support, according to students. Students symbolically performed a, quote, decontamination outside the TV station, highlighting its negative portrayal of them, according to student Ivona Markovic. President Alexander Vucic has labeled the protest as a counter-revolution, facing increased pressure while supporting pro-government media like Informer. Wow. So, I think I talked about Serbia protests a couple weeks or months ago. And if it's been going on that long in Serbia, you know something's up. You know something is up. Something terrible is going on in that country. I'm not going against this government, but I'm certainly not defending it either. But if the people have its say, and they speak out about what is going on, let them. Hopefully a solution does come out of it, where we can all live our lives peacefully and in harmony as well. But otherwise, keep it up, students. Keep on speaking out for whatever you believe is right. There's nothing that can stop you. Other than the government. Well, what can they do about it? There's nothing stopping them. Apple to release completely revamped iPhone upgrade for health, report claims. Apple is working on an upgrade to its iPhone health app, which will leverage data from earbuds, Apple Watch, and AI. Great. Just what we need. More AI, artificial intelligence taking over the world, and maybe in the next few years, might possibly take our jobs. But that's too soon. It's not gonna happen. At least, not this decade. I don't think AI is that advanced to actually take our jobs. Maybe if it continues, or even develops at a faster rate than it currently is right now, maybe. Hypothetically, maybe. But otherwise, enjoy whatever jobs you have at the moment, because someday they will be obsolete. You just won't know it yet. It will happen when we least expect. Apple is working on a significant upgrade to the company's health features for users, according to a new report. CEO Tim Cook has repeatedly said health will be the company's biggest legacy. Here's what's thought to be on its way. The report comes from Bloomberg. Mark Gurman, in its latest Power On newsletter. The initiative is called Project Mulberry, and it involves a completely revamped health app plus a health coach. The service would be powered by a new AI agent that would replicate, at least to some extent, a real doctor, Goodman says. Dang, that's crazy. Although it's been going for some time, it's now full steam ahead with a release due as early as iOS 19.4. The update is scheduled for spring or summer of next year, Goodman says. The timing of iOS 19.4 seems right, after all. This year's equivalent in the cycle, iOS 18.4, is almost certain to land in a matter of hours. Full details here. And it just leads to another article. Okay, so Apple being Apple, finding ways to introduce something new, and that's about it. There's not much they can do to the phone unless you give it 3 or 4 years, like I always do, because, well, I don't think Apple device models are all that different to begin with. You only see difference in Apple devices if you wait 3 or 4 generations from the current model or generation you currently have. That's at least how I do it. And everyone should too, because at least it saves you money, and it will be a massive upgrade as time goes by. So there you go. South Korea, China, and Japan agreed to promote regional trade by speeding up negotiations for a comprehensive trilateral free trade agreement. The three countries called for creating a predictable trade and an investment environment in response to Trump's planned 25% import tariffs on cars and auto parts, which may hurt Asian automakers. Chinese official Wang Liping, Wang Liping, good grief, stated that, quote unquote, on unilateralism and protectionism are spreading, and the free nations must safeguard the multilateral trading system, accounting for 24% of the global economy. Well, Trump is doing something. It may not be in his favor, but at least he is changing the geopolitical landscape. May not be forever, but it's a massive change from the last few years. So, yeah, I'd like to see how that would go, because of the biggest nations in Asia all come together and come up with some agreements to trade amongst themselves and towards other countries, that'll be something. Nothing is going to stop them. Could this mean that the next big empire could be somewhere in Asia? Maybe. Possibly. But we'll have to wait and find out in the next decade or two. I think it'll be China, because, well, they're already trading to many countries around the world and have some influence in Africa, at the minimum. There's so much that's yet to come. Let's see what happens. Over 1 million private photos from dating apps exposed online. Researchers have discovered nearly 1.5 million pictures from specialist dating apps, many of which are explicit, being stored online without password protection, leaving them vulnerable to hackers and extortionists. Well, of course they are. If there's no password protection, then you're screwed. Whatever dirty pics people have, it's going to go all over the internet. And I don't want to see that. Goodness me. Well, like I said a couple minutes ago, you can never be too safe. You never know what's going to happen next. Screen time blamed for cross-cultural drop in birth rates. Writers Noel King and Miles Bryan theorized that Netflix, video games, and other media are largely responsible for a widespread decline in birth rates. Well, no. The reason why birth rates are so low is because a man and a woman are not making love as often as they should to then create their own offspring, which will then carry on for generations. Although recently I shift more towards the right, I'm so glad I haven't shifted too far to the right. I'll at least try to be open-minded because I know there's people I know that are on the left, and of course some people, with the exception of Risk and Eric, mostly on the right. Like, you can't trust anyone. You can't just believe anything you see on the internet because there's nothing to back up. Like, video games, Netflix, media, as the reasons behind birth rate decline. Again, no. The reason why birth rates are so low is because a man and a woman are not making love, they're not creating their own offspring, that will then become adults themselves and then repeat the process all over again. Because that's how many millions of years have been. Passing on genes for generations. Yeah, people can argue technology is one of the reasons, but it's not the reason. So stupid. Like, honestly, that's just stupid in my opinion. I'm so glad I'm thinking clearly. I'm thinking carefully about this. Because that is ridiculous. Do what Hungary does. Give tax breaks to families to have children. The more children, the bigger the tax break. Makes sense to me. Well, mostly. I mean, it's a short-term fix, but it won't be enough. You can't just give tax breaks. That still won't fix the problem. Bugger. Another TikTok ban deadline is approaching. What are Trump's options? Where does the TikTok saga stand? With 1 week to go before a potential ban, President Trump has said he's open to lowering tariffs on China if the country backs a sale, or he could merely extend the deadline further. Legislation under the former Biden administration called for TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, to divest from the app by January 19th. Trump extended that deadline by executive order on his first day back in office. A few people and entities, including YouTube star Mr. Beast and former Los Angeles Dodgers owner Frank McCourt, have expressed interest in purchasing TikTok, though details about their proposal remain scant. Or in other words, we've heard barely diddly squat about them. If that's the case, nothing or not much progress is going to be made. The people are falling for this kind of stuff. They know how big of a deal TikTok is to people. So of course they're going to keep dragging it on until some kind of a solution comes about. Now, even if I was in America and I was to somehow be affected, well, I mean, I'd be concerned about all of the content I made for many, many years. But after a few days or weeks, I'm just gonna continue living life like I always live life. And plus, a reduction in users on TikTok would give an advantage for other existing TikTok users where the ban has not been affected. Like when India banned TikTok. Although I do miss the... Actually, no, I don't. I don't miss the TikTok by the Indian content creators. I don't hate them, but it's just not... they're not my kind of videos. One, India. Now begs the question, what if the ban for TikTok in the United States does go ahead as it should? I don't want to, but if they say they would, they should. As it should be banned. What will TikTok look like? That is an interesting question. And what about the bigger TikTok creators from the United States, like the D'Amelio sisters, Addison Rae, Nessa Barrett, Chase Hudson, Bryce Hall? Why am I naming the TikTok creators from COVID? Good grief. Well, that's what happens. Brain rot, folks. That's all you know. The more you know, the less you do. So that's a good saying. The more you know, the less you do. Because if you know too much, there isn't much you can do. Because you're always going to think, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, you're always going to be thinking about what to do and not do actually doing it to begin with. It's just, that's funny in my head. Scientists hope Hungary. Oh, I've already read that. What am I doing? Where are the lads? Where's Eric or Briscoe? Who knows? Who knows? UK-based operator Global Airlines ready for special A380 flights to New York, JFK in May. The new company Global Airlines has already started pre-selling the first flight for its Airbus A380. After a long wait and a somewhat overdue announcement, the new startup, Airline Global Airlines, a UK-based operator that will exclusively use the Airbus A380 Super Jumbos, is now getting ready to begin its flights. The airline announced that you can now join the quote-unquote pre-sale waiting list for flights starting in May this year. Interesting. May not hear much about it when it happens, but can't wait to see how that goes. Sounds very interesting. I'm not reading that. Some headline just came up on my iPad recording this, so I'm not reading that. Yeah. I mean, oh yeah, I think Ryanair also uses one type of aircraft. Because it's just cheaper to have people that's part of the flight crew staff to be trained to operate one specific type of aircraft. Yeah, I think that's about it. That's the only thing I can think of the benefits is having one type of aircraft. Is it's not just cheaper to operate per aircraft, but at least overall, if you're only working on one specific aircraft, you only have to cover expenses for that specific aircraft type and nothing else. Like, that is it. So that's pretty smart. Protesters gather at Tesla dealerships nationwide for Tesla takedown. The most organized Tesla takedown protests targeting Elon Musk were held at 277 Tesla showrooms across the United States on Saturday. Meanwhile, smaller turnouts cropped up in numerous European cities. Some protesters vandalized Tesla vehicles, which US Attorney General Pam Bondi condemned as domestic terrorism. Musk reassured employees on March 20th that the Model Y would remain the best-selling car and predicted Tesla would sell over 10 million cars worldwide by next year. European cities, eh? One of my next-door neighbors has a Tesla, and it still looks fine. No one has actually come about and vandalized the thing. But if it does get vandalized, which I don't want it to happen, I mean, I understand why they're doing it, because they don't like what Elon Musk has said, what Elon Musk has done. So the only way to go against him is damaging the property of the products sold from or made by the company that he owns. That's why people are going after Tesla, because they don't like, and they certainly do not agree with what Elon Musk has said or has done. So, other than calling him a Nazi or a fascist, the next call to action is to cause some damage to property relating to what Elon Musk has worked on. Well, hopefully the neighbor's car is still operational after all of this. I don't blame people who are doing this, but come on, man. You can't just damage people's property because you don't agree with them. Like, most people that own a Tesla are likely on the left. and they might have voted Democrat. In my opinion, that doesn't make any sense. Few years ago, people were like, Tesla's great. It's good for the environment. It's an electric vehicle. It doesn't use fossil fuels. But now people are like, we must destroy Teslas because the owner of the company has said something racist, fascist, and something in between. It's like, yes, so. I mean, you can have your own opinions about it, but there's no need to damage someone else's property. I know people are gonna have their own opinions about that, and that's okay. However, there are better ways to calling out a particular person without without someone saying that you are causing destruction and domestic terrorism by damaging other people's property. It is possible. We just won't know what those possibilities are until they happen. And oh my gosh, my voice is very, very whiny. I hate when my voice does that. Speaking of fossil fuels, fossil fuel companies can now email Trump for air pollution exemptions. Okay. The EPA has introduced an email-based system for fossil fuel companies to request exemptions from air pollution regulations. Each submission will be reviewed individually by President Trump, with approved exemptions lasting for up to 2 years, after which they can be renewed. Yeah, I think Risk would be on board with that because again, he doesn't care about the environment. He's all about bringing the big cheese, and he knows that. He also says that fossil fuels is the only source of fuel there is. Although I would argue, like, there isn't enough fossil fuel left on this planet. We're going to have to find some other alternative fuel source at some point, and it may as well be hydrogen fuel, or at least engines that run on hydrogen. That's what I say that'll be the future. I think this is one construction. I think this is one company that manufactures vehicles for construction work, and they run on hydrogen. Not a lot, but there is a handful of construction vehicles that run on hydrogen fuel, which is great, and certainly way more sustainable and renewable. So if there are people that do care about sustainable and renewable energy, I suggest they would back hydrogen fuel. It's still in its infancy, but it's on its way. And it's going to be a great alternative to fossil fuels in the next few years. That I will say for sure. Muslims worldwide celebrate Eid al-Fitr, marking the end of Ramadan. This year, some festivities began March 29th, as the start of the holiday depends on moon sightings. Traditions vary by country, with celebrations including prayers, family gatherings, and the exchange of gifts like Eidiyah in Egypt and green packets in Malaysia. This Eid marks the second in Gaza since the Israel-Hamas war began, and the first in Syria since the ouster of former President Bashar Assad. Quite the moment in history. Salam alaikum. Deep-sea mining is currently not permitted under international law, but the Trump administration is considering allowing the practice to move forward. Proponents argue that it could provide essential minerals for technology while reducing carbon emissions from land-based mining. Critics warn of potential harm to marine ecosystems, and the International Seabed Authority is developing regulations before permitting such operations. However, the United States has not ratified the treaty to establish the organization. Interesting points. Marine ecosystems. Underground sea mining is an alternative to land mining, which is, people argued, is Should we do mining underwater as a reduction to carbon emissions? Or should we not, to protect the marine ecosystems? Well, if there aren't any marine ecosystems in such lands to be mined, then yeah, go ahead. But if there is marine life down there, then honestly, just leave it. It's not worth it. Especially if it's like a massive tourist attraction, like the Great Barrier Reefs in Australia. If it brings in tons of tourists every year, then yeah, it's a no-brainer that you shouldn't actually mine underwater. You should not do any mining underwater in such areas. Otherwise, for the sake of carbon emission reductions, or at least finding an alternative which does emit the least amount of carbon dioxide, so be it. There's so much complications that go into it. Francis Le Pen faces verdict that could end presidential hopes. Crikey. A French court will rule on Monday in a trial of far-right leader Marine Le Pen over alleged fake job scams at the EU Parliament. Prosecutors have asked the court to issue Le Pen with both a jail sentence and a ban from holding public office, which could ruin her chances of standing for president in 2027. If Le Pen falls, her protégé, Jordan Bardella, aged 29, is waiting in the wings as the National Rally Party leader. Well, there's always alternatives, man. Look, I understand. I'm very aware that many world leaders have done very, very questionable and sketchy things. Cases like that are very serious. So, if there is a verdict, and there is evidence, it comes down to the fact, is there enough sufficient and ironclad evidence to prove what this person has done is true? If that is not the case, then someone in the legal system of that nation has a lot of questions to answer. They'll have to answer it as soon as possible, because for whatever reason, it's likely it gets to a point in a politician's life they could go as far as to speak out from whatever comes to their mind, and it causes a lot of outrage. Again, can't argue with that. Everyone can be mad about what they say. But if there are some people in the judicial system that are simply putting up these kinds of cases against such people because they don't agree with what they say or what they've done, well, that's terrible. It's not good. It's not a good enough reason. If there is a reason for serious corruption charges, or at least serious cases of conflict of interest and such, then yeah, understandable. But if not, and this is all done for the sake of, or at least in spite of said person, then that is not on. Life is unfair, yes, but that's how life is. If you don't like what goes on in a nation, if you don't like what goes on in a nation, then simply move to another country. If the country allows you to reside there. In fact, there's plenty of nations that will allow people to reside there, even if you're not from that nation. You just gotta find the one that is at least compliant with allowing you in. Anyway, that's like the long answer to the court case regarding Le Pen. People don't have. I know people will not agree with her, and they don't like what she says. Perhaps someone has to ask the question. what is to come out of that verdict? Could this have prevented something quite serious, or is it just some people that just don't like her so badly they thought, okay, let's do a court case on her? That is not on. I may not agree with everything she says, but again, there has to be some kind of legitimacy in which having such court case would prevent something terrible from happening from within the government. If that's not the case, then I'm going in circles again, but yeah, I've already made case in point. And everyone has their own opinions, and everyone is entitled to those opinions. However, cops and robbers, ho ho. Fringe anti-immigration figure disrupts Albanese as climate activists repeatedly target Dutton. The Prime Minister and opposition leader both kicked off campaigning in Brisbane on Saturday, highlighting their determination to win back 3 inner-city seats claimed by the Greens at the previous election, but had to deal with hecklers using intrusive tactics. Fringe anti-immigrant writer Lawrence McIntyre, who has been pictured with neo-Nazi figures Joel Davis and Blair Cotterill in an image circulating on social media, shouted questions at Albanese and Treasurer Jim Chalmers at a press conference in Brisbane. Crikey. That's quite the bugger. That's a lot to get into. Well, one thing's for sure, I'm certainly lost for words. All I can say is speak out on whatever issues goes on, and whatever happens, try to question it. Why does this have to be the case? Why are we allowing this and such happening? Whatever goes on, always question what goes on. Because if you don't, eventually, someone with ideas that goes against people's interests will get into power, and by then, it will already be too late, and there is nothing that anyone could be doing to stop that. Or there won't be anything people can do to stop it. And yeah, and that is it for this episode.